Today I'm planning to. Is it is it that bright? It looks like the background looks very bright. Is it? Yeah, maybe like this. I don't know. What happens is today I'm starting in a new adventure. I'll be shooting with my analog camera. I have basically this beauty here, Canon EOS 1V. It's a film camera. I load up a roll of Kodak 200. This time I'm not going to mess up with the exposure index. I'm just going to shoot it at ISO 200 as it rated. And I'm going to revisit some of the places that I shot before, obviously with my digital camera. I'm just going to try to do the same long exposures with analog photography now. And we'll see how it goes. This is an absolute tank of a camera. It's one of my pet cameras, one of my dream cameras. Not necessarily this one, but something similar. I always wanted to have a Canon 1DX Mark II. This is when I loved it. Now there is a 1DX Mark III. It's a DSLR. It's around 8,000 euros. I will never going to purchase it, but this comes very close. But obviously it's a film camera. And now, just to understand how amazing it is, you can change the film emulation mid-roll, so you can simply rewind it and then it will remember. You can put another film into it and then you can go back to that. That's one pretty cool thing. It has another function I never seen, not even in Sony cameras, like a depth of field DEP mode, which means basically you can focus on the foreground, focus then on the background, and then the camera will try to find for you the hyperfocal distance. It's absolutely amazing, because obviously in film photography you cannot really do focus stacking like you do it in digital. I mean, sure, you can take 3 exposures. One you focus in foreground, midground, and background, and then you scan the film, you convert it into a digital format, and then you apply your regular workflow for focus stacking in Photoshop. But this camera was created somewhere when Photoshop and this was in the beginning, so it's a nice feature that for example, in my Sony camera I don't see it. I don't have this function. The third thing that impresses me is obviously you're going to have a spot metering mode apart from center weighted and average, but you can take exposure from 8 different points in your scene and the camera will average for you. That's amazing. Like my Sony camera, the Sony A7Siii that costs 4,000 euro, doesn't have that. I cannot spot meter various areas and then get an average. It's absolutely mind-blowing. Like, what is, and this was made, well, this production of this camera started somewhere in year 2000, so 23 years ago. It stopped somewhere in 2010. They will still can repair it for you, I understand, up to 2025. After that, nothing. God knows what will happen, but I'm going to enjoy it until then. And I don't have all the lenses, but I surely have one, that that will do it for me. And this is the Sigma 100 to 400, which, if you watch my channel, I love doing landscape photography with zoom lenses, and it's a Canon EF mount, so it's absolutely perfect. Now, I haven't done this in a while, and that is taking my Sony camera out of the bag. I mean, wow, are you for real? Well, I have to maintain the same filter thread and adapter for the lens. Okay, because it's the same 67mm thread, so that's perfect. And I'm going to downlayer. There are a few places there that most likely I like to photograph. There is the statue of Kazmat, and then I can do, I know other minimalistic composition that I photographed before. So this is my plan for today. Good door locket blower. Yeah. Anyway, and here as well. Oh. It's one of the warmest September day in Ireland here. Today they said it will be 27 degrees. That's very unusual. Look at this behemoth. Jesus. Great. Anyway, I'm ready. Now, this camera has a battery and is not your regular one. You have like I'll show you. It's a very rare type of battery, and honestly, I haven't seen this ever. I haven't seen this before. The microphone, we don't need it. What else we don't need? Yeah, this camera we don't need. This is my other film camera, forget about it. The Canon EOS one takes these two CR5 batteries. I bought two of them. I never seen this type before. Apparently you can shoot about 50 rolls of film until you need to change it. We will see how this works. And yes, I have my Lee filter kit and a GoPro and my DJI Osmo for behind the scenes, right? This is at 84%, that's perfect. So at least we can vlog. And let me see what is the battery for DJI Osmo. Hello, it's gone? No battery at all, is it? No, we have DJI Osmo is at 87%. So we are ready to rock and roll. Now, we will be going rocking and rolling, don't worry, but then we still need to place one more thing in the bag, and that is the Sekonic light meter. I mean, without that it's quite difficult to shoot film. Now, I just praised this camera for its spot metering options and things like this. I still prefer to use a light meter. So we have audio. I bought fresh batteries for my Zoom F2. This is my audio recorder, which I left it on in my bag, so the battery are gone now. I purchased two fresh new batteries, and you know, I was about to forget the most important thing for long exposure, and this is the remote control. It would have been an absolute rookie mistake. This is the Canon S8N3, and the beauty of this remote control for Canon camera is that they don't need batteries themselves. They take the battery from the camera. It's absolutely neat. It's something that you don't need to worry about. Like for example, my remote control for Sony has its own battery, so if you leave it on, you may be in trouble because the battery will discharge themselves. But here you don't have this option. And let me see, yeah, this is the remote control for the Sony, and this is the remote control for the Canon. So we have audio, that's very important. We have the filters, we have the camcorders, we have the film camera. Stock emulation is inserted. Away we go. See you there. We are here in Dunleer, and luckily I'm with my trusty gear. This time I have my GoPro and my DJI, as I was saying to you, back home. And this is the camera that we are shooting today with. Sony A7Siii, Canon EOS 1 and Sigma 100 to 400 of a second. And this is the image that we are dealing with. We have this pier here in Dunleer, and I'm struggling to find, what happens is I'm struggling to find a composition that includes a lot of contrast, because unfortunately there is an overcast day and there is very little contrast in this scene, so it doesn't print well on film. you have to expose for the shadows and develop the highlights, but the shadows are not that deep, so it won't look nice. The highlights are only in zone 6, 7, and I try to place my shadows obviously in zone 3. So the way we do it, basically I have my trusty Sekonic light meter here. Let me reset it for you. And what happens is there are multiple ways of doing this, taking an exposure with a light meter. So for example, you can use this in incidental metering, and the way you do it is you simply press the button here, the metering button, and that will give you an overall exposure of, for example, of f16. We are at 1/80 of a second. So you can use this to take the photo, but you have absolutely no idea where the highlights and shadows will be placed. So in order to do this, you have to turn around the light meter to face different directions and maybe average the scene like this. I don't use this function, and what I use usually is obviously the sport metering mode. And sport metering along with the zone system. To use the sport metering mode, you have to simply turn the dial until it measures blue here, and then you can point the light meter to various areas, and you take the exposure like this. Now there is a delta EV button here, an average button, and you'll be tempted to use this thinking that it's something that your camera also does. Like for example, you can meter certain tones and then you're going to average them like so. So for example, you can point your camera to what you believe it's mid-gray, right? And you can take a reading there and you put it in the memory, and then you can point it to highlights, and you can memorize that, and then you can point it to shadows, and you can put this into memory, and when you average, it will give you 1/50 of a second. But when you're going to average this setting, most of the time it's not necessarily the correct one, because it's just an average of the tones that you want to capture in your scene. Unfortunately, as you can see, the middle gray is always smack in the middle of the diagram. So for example, for those 3 tones that I measured, the camera tells me to shoot at 1/160 of a second, and that gives me 2 tones, 2 stops on top and two stops below middle gray. And this is not necessarily the correct exposure. I'm doing things a little bit different. I'm using the most important button on this light meter, which is the mid-tone button. So what I do after I'm happy with my composition, and this is my composition, I don't know if you can see it through, you can see it. This is what you can see through the viewfinder. So this is what I have framed. What happens is I'm going to first meter the shadows where I want to capture the details, and this is that black board that it is in the right side of the screen. So this shows me 1/40, and I put this into memory. Then I'm going to meter the highlights of interest, and I'm going to memorize this, and then I'm going to get another 2 readings of my subject. Could be the water, could be the bridge itself, and I'm going to put those in the memory as well. And now, holding the mid-tone button pressed and rotating the jog wheel, I'm going to place my shadows, which is the first reading, in the zone 2. And as you can see, the correct exposure is 1/160 of a second, and my highlights are also in 2 stops above middle gray. I wish to be 3 stops, but they are not. Now you can recall the mid-tone value by pressing mode and mid-tone like this, and that will show you 1/160 of a second. So this is the value that I have to shoot on. Now, without further ado, we'll put this into the camera. So f16 at 1/60 of a second. But what else we can do is actually use 1/22 122 of exposure, and then an aperture f22, and then the exposure will be 1/80 of a second, which is still quite high. Now, with the help of the technology, we have something that is called Lee stop metering, and that will tell me that for an exposure of 1/80 of a second, I have to expose for 13 seconds. Okay, this when I'm going to use a 10-stop filter in front of the lens. But because I'm going to be using a polarizer, I can drop the exposure down with another 2 stops. So instead of 1/80 of a second, we can use 1/20 of a second, and that will translate into 50 seconds exposure. It's kind of high, so what I'm aiming for is actually 1/30 of a second. So for example, if I have the idea is to use 1/30 of a second, because that will translate into 30 seconds exposure. So in order to do that, I'm going to make the exposure twice as bright, which means that I'll be using, instead of f22, f11, and I'm also going to drop 2, 3, 4. No, I just have to do 4 clicks. So instead of f22, I'm going to use f14, and that is the correct exposure. It's a similar exposure. So of f14, that's 1/30 of a second with a polarizer and a 10-stop ND-grad, that will translate into 30 seconds exposure. Why is this important? Because film has a rule which is called the reciprocity rule. So the longer you expose the film, the less it will become sensitive to the light. So 30 seconds, you have to calculate 30 at the power of 1.3, and that will give you exactly 83 seconds, which is 1 minute and 23. And as you can see here, camera has a very nice timer for me, and it tells me the time that is elapsed. So I'm just going to stop this at exactly 1 minute and 23 seconds. We'll come back again and we will be talking again about how to meter. Maybe I was not too clear, but what I'm trying to say is, whenever you shoot color negative film, and I have a Kodak 200, maybe I should have mentioned that, it is a color negative film, what you want to do is always place your shadows of interest at zone 3. This is where film will print it as its best. You shoot for the shadows, you expose for the shadows, and you develop for the highlights. Ideally, you need a much more contrasty scene. I don't have that. I have what I have. That's what it is. We are getting close to 1/23 seconds. And you want basically the shadows to be in zone 3. So whenever you use a light meter, 20, 21, 22, 23, that's it. Done. Exposure taken. So whenever you use a light meter, that will only show you the zone 5. So you have to do a mental math, but with the help of the Sekonic A7Siii, the device will do the calculations for you. And yeah, we'll go find a different topic, a different subject, and we'll take it from there. Thanks. Now I have found another composition. This is these boats that are forming a pattern. And again, in order to get the correct exposure, again I'm at f16 ISO 200. I'm just going to meter the shadows of importance, and there are not too many shadows, but I definitely can see some dark areas on those boats. Some of the boats. Oh, am I still recording here? Yeah, some of the boats are simply painted in a black color. So I'm just going to use this as a reference point, and then I'm pretty sure I can find a lot of bright tones and mid-gray tones, and I'll put them all together, and then obviously the light meter shows me that I should shoot, this is even a low contrast scene, I should shoot at 1/, aperture of f/16 at 1/500 of a second. Well, that's not nice. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Then the aperture becomes 1/125. It is still terribly fast. So then I have to close down the aperture more, 1, 2, 3 stops, and then I can open up the shutter speed more, 1, 2, 3. So the fastest I can go is f/22 at 1/60 of a second. That will be with the polarizer of its maximum strength. f/22 at 1/60 of a second. Well, 1/60 of a second, according to my calculator, means exactly 15 seconds. 15 seconds exposure. Now, if we open up the calculator and we put him in the landscape mode, I said 15 seconds. That means 15 at power 1.3 equals 33.8. We can do it, for example, for 35 seconds. Yeah, 35 seconds will do. So we have to expose for exactly 35 seconds. Now I'm going to deploy the polarizing filter at its maximum, which is here. And then I'm going to drop in the 10 filter, which is here. Hopefully my calculations are correct, and I have to put the camera now in bulb mode, and I said that I would expose for 35 seconds. So away we go. Will it work? I don't know. I hope. And why am I aiming for shorter exposure time than usual is because leaf filters, they have a very blue cast, and if you expose more than 1 minute, then it will be very difficult to get that blue cast out of your film. If you shoot black and white, that's not a problem. If you shoot slide, it's impossible to almost to recover, so you only left with color negative. So that's it. I'm at the third location now. Let me grab quickly my light meter, and this is what I have in front of me. This has been shot many times. We have these 3 piers, as you can see, and they form some sort of a parallax and looks like a continuous line. Well, not that much in my, unfortunately, in my composition, but I'm trying my best. And again, this time I was metering the shadows at the base of the foreground pier, and then the sky and the water. And luckily this time at ISO 200, the aperture is f/22 and the middle gray should be exposed as 1/125 of a second, provided I'm placing the shadows in zone 3, as I always do. Now I have a polarizing filter in front of my lens, and polarizer filter will eat 2 stops of light, which means that instead of using 1/25 of a second, I have to use actually 1/30th of a second. And this is perfect because 1/30th of a second with a 10 stop filter in front of it gives you exactly 30 seconds. And 30 seconds at 1/3 power is 1 minute and 23 seconds. So this is exactly what are you going to expose. I already preset the focus. I'm just going now change to bulb mode, and viewfinder is closed. Away we go. Man, I have so much fun. I hope, I really hope they will work. I have no clue. And this is something, you know, this all feels like lottery somehow. I think that's why it's so addictive, maybe, because you take a photo, you make these calculations with a handheld light meter, and am I recording? Yeah. And then you don't know what you're gonna get, and sometimes you're disappointed, but sometimes you're bang on. You are absolutely spot on, and wow, you just congratulate yourself. Now there is a boat coming. That will ruin the shot a little bit. What is the time? Oh, 47 seconds. We'll see. Hopefully it will leave a trace. Nothing we can do about it. 23. That's it. 1 minute and 23 seconds. Is it done? Is it in the ballpark? I have no clue. I mean, it should be, you know. I made all the correct calculations. Why not? I don't know. It's one of the most overcast day I've seen in my life. There are no shadows. There is no contrast. This is not color negative is not for this scene. Probably a slide is better, but I don't have it one, so we have to work with whatever we have. Okay. See you shortly. Yeah, what an adventure. After I finished with Dan Lira, I went to Collymore Harbor. I've been here before, maybe in January or February. Man, it was raining cats and dogs then. Today I had a very clear day, no rain at all, but again, very, very, very extremely overcast. Very little contrast in the scene. Anyway, shooting film teaches you also a lot about digital as well, and especially for video, if you want to shoot S-Log. You see, color negative film has quite a bit of a dynamic range, but in an overcast day you can't really place your shadows in zone 2 because the highlights will barely reach zone 6. So you see, because you have such a wide latitude, it is not in your advantage. Probably for this type of light you have two options. One, you don't take the shot. Two, you may use a slide film if you have one, because slide film has less dynamic range, so you have to actually protect the highlights rather than expose for the shadows. So it's the opposite. Similar things happen in video. If you shoot in S-Log and you have, which for Sony takes care of 13-14 stops of dynamic range, but your scene has only 5, you are wasting a lot of information, and the file could be very thin and very difficult to grade, because you didn't record that much. Each stop will get very little information. But if you change the gamma curve to Rec 709, then, because that only has maybe 8-9 stops, what you have recorded will be much more beefier. So yeah, I advise everyone to shoot film if you can. It's not necessary, but for me it's a pleasure. I'm very curious, obviously, how this will going to work. I don't know. It will take a while until I'm going to develop this film. And it's like winning the lottery, you know, or it's like playing cards or jackpot or roulette or whatever, because you don't know what you're going to get. I mean, you have your light meter, you meter the midtones and shadows and highlights, and then you think of the latitude of your film and the zone system, and then you have a polarizing and a 10 stopper, and then you use the reciprocity rule, and you do all those calculations. But in the end, I don't know, because the one who's going to develop the film for you may make some errors in the developing times, or hopefully that won't be the case. And then how are you going to scan it? You know, you have to scan the film ultimately to be able to print it all or put it on social media. So you see, it's quite an adventure until you're going to see the whole picture. But when you nail it, you're going to be ecstatic. You have to though understand that most of the time you're not going to nail it, especially in the beginning. So it is what it is. While with digital, the good thing is that you take the photo, you immediately see the feedback, you have highlights, warning, you have RGB parade and channels. You know exactly if you clip it or not, so you can immediately correct yourself. Film is not like this. Film is unforgiven, but when you nail it, you nail it. So we're back in the studio. Welcome to the nostril shot. And if you think that I'm going to hold this tiny microphone like this, you're wrong. Do you see this clip here? Do you see this? Yeah, you clip this to your shirt, man. That's how you use it. I don't know. I don't understand this trend now with holding tiny microphones in your hand for no reason. Anyway, finally I got the photos back from the lab, and they were only developed. So if you're thinking or wondering why they look sepia, it's not because I made a mistake with the film emulation, because this is how they come through. Anyway, I have 36 exposure, but I will be referred only to the one that I shot. I'm using Lightroom, and I'm using a plugin called Negative Lab Pro in order to further edit those videos. So this is the first shot, the one that I was trying to calculate and most likely miscalculate the exposure. So let's see what we got. So if we get the color picker here, we can white balance of the edge of the screen, and now all we have to do is crop in a little bit, because Negative Lab Pro won't make the correct assumption if you include borders that are not supposed to exist in your frame. And now, what was the Control-Alt-N? What was the Negative Lab Pro? Negative Lab Pro. Anyway, this is the plugin, and as you can see, it does a good thing converting the photo, and we can probably use something like Lab Highlight Soft, and basically this is the image. I still doubt about the calculation that I made, but as you can see, we have plenty of details everywhere. The horizon line could be a little bit wonky, and the sky is kind of washed out, and there is a piece of hair here that can be probably corrected in Photoshop, but the water is smooth. I have plenty of details in the shadows, and it was an overcast day. That's why the sky has absolutely no tonality there. We can probably try to recover some of it. And the funny thing is that when you try to readjust the photo using Negative Lab Pro, all the controls are inverted. So if you want to recover the highlights, you actually have to increase them, you see? Yeah, but we're not going to do any of this. We're just going to leave this as it is. So this is the first example. The second photo was the one with the boats. And again, we were going to white balance it and crop it just to get what we want, kind of like this. And then if we're going to apply Negative Lab Pro, we're going to get this result. And again, we can use Highlight Soft. This is just a personal preference, and I think things are looking good. You can further tweak everything, white balance and everything, and for this reason, I don't know actually how Kodak Gold looks like, because now everything is digitalized instead of being printed on a paper, but it doesn't matter. As you can see, the whole tonality is there. I have details everywhere. Highlights are not clipped. You have plenty of details in the shadows as well. It's just that the composition itself is kind of bizarre. I mean, sure, there are a lot of boats here, but I don't know, nothing stands out. It's like a pattern, but the pattern, there is no breaking of a pattern. Maybe this boat is here, this purple boat in the middle, but it doesn't draw your attention. It should have been somewhere in the rule of thirds, or anyway, it's just an attempt, nothing portfolio wise. We move on. The third photo, remember I was on on the end of the pier, and I was talking about that parallax that will create one single line of piers. Yeah, I was wrong. Obviously, it didn't happen. Anyway, I was too excited. Maybe, I don't know what. I should have taken my time more with this photo, but it is what it is. And now when we're applying the same plugin, first thing that we can see is this piece of hair here, which is absolutely annoying. But if you pay attention when you scan, and there is a light leak here on the left side of the photo as well, I think it's just because of the developing process. I'm not sure what's happening. Again, a totally uninteresting sky, but it's so fascinating to get a long exposure on the on film. Again, the calculations were right. I have plenty of details in the shadow area. As you can see, nothing is crushed, and too bad the sky is completely uninteresting. But I'll probably revisit the location when the weather is better. Now, as a bonus, we have this photo, which is like some sort of a reverse shot. It's kind of from the same location, the last location that I have used. And I don't know, I kind of like it. We just have to apply the plugin, and the magic happens. I just really like the geometry, you know, those street lights, and we have these leading lines and everything. You have triangles that are forming. Too bad the sky is, again, uninteresting. Exposure is bang on, calculations were correct. It's very easy. Basically, you should expose for this gray pollard or any of the gray stones here, and probably you're correct. But I much prefer to expose the shadows and then add two stops. So for example, if your shutter speed will be 1/100, right, you have to but no, the shadows will never be at 1/100. That's too bright. If the exposure will be, for example, 1/8 of a second, to put the shadows in zone 3, you have to make it not 1/15 but 1/30 of a second. So that's how you calculate. You make it basically 2 stops faster, and it's as simple as that, because color negative film is very hard to blow up the highlights. Anyway, that was it for today. I have plenty of videos about film photography, so I hope I'll catch you in the next one. See you.